You ever notice how people only look for good news when everything around them is already burning? They stare at the sky, hoping for a sign, a whisper, a miracle that pulls them out of the mess they created. And when something finally appears, something different, something that feels like a message, they hesitate, they doubt, they scroll past it like it's just another distraction. Signs appear when you're finally ready to notice them. Isn't that strange? People walk through life tripping over clues, slipping past moments that practically scream their name, yet they remain blind, convinced nothing is meant for them. They blame the world, they blame fate, they blame luck. Oh, luck is everyone's favorite excuse. But the truth is much simpler, much darker. You don't see the sign until something inside you finally cracks open, until the chaos around you becomes loud enough to shake loose the dust covering your vision. Only then do you begin to notice what was hovering right in front of you all along. It's almost comical how people beg for direction while ignoring every whisper that tries to guide them. They say, "Give me a sign," and when it arrives, tiny, subtle, barely noticeable, they look the other way. They're expecting fireworks, glowing clouds, a voice thundering from the sky. They want drama, not truth. Truth is quieter. It doesn't chase you with flashing lights and loud alarms. It sits patiently, waiting for you to stop pretending you don't hear it, waiting for the moment you're desperate enough, tired enough, cracked enough to finally pay attention. And when that moment comes, oh, it feels like the whole world suddenly shifted. But nothing shifted at all. The only thing that changed was you. The sign didn't get louder. You just stopped drowning it out with your excuses. You stopped stuffing your ears with denial. You stopped distracting yourself with noise and nonsense. The sign was always there, but your ego wasn't ready, your pride wasn't ready, your fear definitely wasn't ready. You only see it when your defenses start falling apart, one piece at a time. People love to pretend they're in control, that they know where they're going, but deep down they're lost, wandering, guessing. And there's nothing wrong with being lost unless you're too stubborn to admit it. When you refuse to admit you're lost, you miss the very thing that could save you. You brush aside the hint that says, "Turn here." You ignore the feeling that says, "Look again." You treat the message meant for you like background noise, because admitting it matters means admitting you need help. And most people would rather walk into a wall than admit that. What's fascinating is that signs don't arrive when you want them to. They arrive when you're cornered by your own choices, when you've run out of lies to comfort yourself, when the life you built with shortcuts and wishful thinking finally collapses enough for you to see past the illusion. That's when the sign steps forward, not because it wasn't there before, but because you ran out of ways to ignore it. Pain sharpens your vision. Silence sharpens your hearing. Chaos sharpens your awareness. Suddenly, the message you once laughed at feels like it's staring right into your soul. And you wonder, why now? But the answer is simple. You weren't ready before. You would have thrown it away. You would have mocked it, dismissed it, or twisted it into something convenient instead of something true. That's why signs don't appear when you're comfortable. Comfort blinds you. Comfort convinces you that nothing needs to change. But the moment your world starts shaking, the moment your routine cracks, the moment your illusions break, that's when your eyes widen, your mind opens, your heart stops pretending. And that's when the sign walks up and taps you on the shoulder, like it's been waiting for this exact second. And once you see it, truly see it, you can't unsee it. It's like a switch flips inside you. Suddenly the coincidences don't feel random anymore. The timing doesn't feel accidental. The message doesn't feel like just another moment. It feels intentional, targeted, almost personal. And maybe it is. Maybe you were meant to notice it now and not a second earlier. Maybe all the delays, the mistakes, the disappointments were part of breaking down whatever wall you built around your own awareness. Signs don't wait for your schedule, they wait for your readiness. And readiness rarely feels comfortable. It feels like losing everything you thought was certain just so you can finally notice the one thing that's been trying to reach you from the start. Good news often arrives disguised as disruption. Funny, isn't it? People pray for miracles, for breakthroughs, for that one moment that changes everything, yet when it finally shows up, it never looks the way they imagined. It doesn't walk in with a golden glow or a trumpet sound. No, it sneaks in wearing chaos like a cheap coat. It shoves your plans off the table, shakes your comfort, rattles your little routines, and suddenly you call it bad luck. You call it a setback. You curse it, fear it, run from it, all while completely missing the fact that this mess, this break, this shift is the very thing you begged for. People want good news, but only if it arrives on their terms. They want answers, as long as those answers don't disturb their habits. They want blessings, as long as those blessings don't require letting go of anything. But life doesn't play by those rules. It doesn't knock politely. It storms in. It rearranges everything you thought was stable. And in the moment, you think the world is collapsing, when really, it's just clearing space for something that couldn't fit before. You see, good news doesn't always come dressed up nicely. Sometimes it looks like loss. Sometimes it feels like confusion. Sometimes it arrives as something so uncomfortable that your first instinct is to push it away. But what if that disruption is the only way to shake you out of the cage you built for yourself? What if the chaos you hate is the doorway you needed? People cling to the familiar even when it's killing them. They hold tight to dead friendships, dying dreams, broken habits, toxic patterns, because it's easier to stay than to change. So the universe, in its twisted sense of humor, sends a disruption big enough to break your grip. And in that moment, everything feels wrong. You panic. You ask, why now? Why this? Why me? But maybe the better question is, what was I refusing to see? Disruption isn't random. It usually shows up right after you've settled somewhere you don't belong, right after you've convinced yourself that mediocrity is comfort, right after you've stopped listening the small warnings that whispered, this isn't it. When soft signs fail, loud ones arrive, and loud ones rarely feel gentle. People misunderstand disruption because they judge it too early. They look at the surface, breakups, job losses, sudden opportunities, unexpected changes, and label them as disasters before giving them time to reveal their purpose. But sometimes the best things enter your life disguised as endings. Sometimes the door that slams in your face is actually protecting you from walking into a fire. Sometimes the slow unraveling of your old life is the only way for a new one to grow. Imagine someone gripping a burning rope. They're terrified to let go because the drop looks dangerous, but the longer they hold on, the more it burns them. Finally, the pain becomes unbearable and they release it. They fall, yes, but they fall into something far better than the rope that was destroying them. That's disruption. You think it's tearing your world apart, but really, it's forcing you to loosen your hold on what's already damaging you. The real trick is noticing the pattern. Every major shift in life starts with discomfort. Growth doesn't begin with clarity, it begins with confusion. Change doesn't start with certainty, it starts with something that knocks you off balance. You can't rise without something pushing you. You can't move without something unsettling you. People think discomfort is punishment, but most of the time, it's preparation. And here's the part everyone avoids. Deep down, you usually know when something is meant to change. You feel it before it happens, a heaviness, a restlessness, a quiet dissatisfaction, a sense that something is off even if you can't name it. Then disruption arrives, not to destroy you, but to confirm what you already felt, to force you to confront what you were trying to ignore. It's almost like the universe saying, you knew this was coming, you just didn't have the courage to start it yourself. So when good news shows up wrapped in disorder, most people reject it because they can't see past the mess. They don't realize the mess is part of the message. They're so focused on what they're losing, they don't notice what they're being freed from. They complain about the discomfort without seeing the direction it's pointing them toward. They call it a problem when it's really an invitation. Good news isn't always soft. Sometimes it shakes. Sometimes it breaks. Sometimes it interrupts the life you thought you wanted to give you the life you actually needed. And if you only judge it by how it feels in the beginning, you'll miss the truth hiding underneath the disruption, waiting for you to finally stop resisting long enough to see it. Ignoring divine nudges leads to missed opportunities, And oh, people are masters at pretending they didn't hear what was meant for them. It's almost an art form, this selective deafness, this convenient blindness. Life whispers, nudges, pushes, practically waves signs in their faces, and they shrug it off like it's nothing. They call it coincidence. They call it imagination. They call it timing. Anything to avoid admitting that something bigger than them tried to get their attention. Because if they admit that, then they also have to admit they ignored it. It's funny how people always want help, yet hate the form help arrives in. They pray for direction, but ignore the sudden shift in their gut. They ask for clarity, but overlook the strange moment that feels too specific to be random. They want guidance, but dismiss the soft warning that something isn't right. They want answers, but refuse to accept anything that doesn't match the script they've already written in their heads. So when a divine nudge comes, quiet, subtle, precise, they step right over it like it's a crack in the sidewalk. Then later, when everything falls apart, they say, "Why didn't I see the signs? You did. You just didn't like them." See, divine nudges aren't loud. They don't punch through walls or scream over your music or force themselves into your day. They come gently, without ego, without theatrics, a strange feeling, a sudden thought, an unexpected hesitation, a moment that makes you turn your head for no reason. But people are too busy, too distracted, too consumed with their own noise to notice the quiet warnings. They treat them like background static, not realizing that these tiny signals are trying to redirect them before they walk into a disaster of their own making. Humans trust comfort far more than intuition. They'd rather stay in a place that's slowly draining them than follow that uneasy feeling telling them to move. They'd rather cling to something familiar than respond to the message whispering, "This isn't for you anymore." They ignore the discomfort that rises when they're around certain people. They silence the voice telling them to slow down. They overlook the red flags not because they can't see them, but because seeing them means admitting they're choosing wrong. And nothing terrifies people more than realizing the damage was preventable. Divine nudges come before the collapse, before the heartbreak, before the mistake. They're mercy in disguise, warnings wrapped in intuition. But when you ignore enough of them, you force life to get louder. And life getting louder is never pleasant. When you don't listen to the whisper, you eventually have to face the lesson. And lessons, they aren't gentle. They're sharp. They're cold. They make you regret every moment you brushed off the earlier signs that would have saved you from this exact pain. But here's the clever part. You always remember the nudges after the consequences hit. Suddenly, the moment you ignored becomes clear. The uneasy feeling makes sense. The hesitation wasn't random anymore. It was protection. You replay it all in your mind, realizing that something tried to steer you away from the very outcome you're suffering through now, and that realization hurts in a way nothing else does. Because you can't blame fate or people or bad luck. You can only blame your refusal to listen. Missed opportunities don't always look like golden doors you walked past. Sometimes the opportunity was the nudge itself. Opportunity often comes disguised as discomfort, a push to leave, a whisper to start, a quiet reminder that you're meant for more. But because it doesn't look shiny or perfect, people dismiss it. They think opportunities arrive with confetti and confidence. No, they usually arrive as an unsettling thought you can't shake. And the tragedy is that those who ignore these nudges end up living lives that feel too small for them. They stay stuck in situations that should have been temporary. They stand in places they've outgrown. They miss the timing that was meant to shift everything. Divine nudges carry timing in them. Perfect, precise timing. And when you ignore them, you don't just miss the message, you miss the moment attached to it. And moments, once gone, don't come back the same way. But people never see the loss immediately. They only see the chaos that comes after the ignored sign. They blame the fallout instead of the decision. They cry over the consequence instead of the warning they stepped over. They say life is unfair, when life actually tried to save them quietly long before the damage took shape. Ignoring these nudges isn't harmless. It's not a minor mistake. It's a slow assassination of your own future, one unnoticed message at a time. And the most haunting part? Those nudges weren't just trying to warn you. They were trying to guide you to something better, something brighter, something meant for you. But you'll never know what it was if you keep walking past the whispers that were sent to open the very door you keep begging for. Reality is rarely what it seems at first glance. And that's the part that fascinates me. People love pretending they understand the world just because they've survived a few years in it. They look at a situation once, maybe twice, and decide they know exactly what's going on. They label things instantly: good, bad, safe, dangerous. They cling to their first impression like it's gospel truth. But the world is a master illusionist. It shows you what you want to see, not what's actually there. And most people never bother looking deeper. Everyone walks around with their own little filter glued to their eyes. Bias, fear, hope, ego. These things twist reality into a story that feels comfortable. If you want someone to believe a lie, just make it match their desires. People don't chase truth, they chase what makes them feel right. They trust appearances, trust the surface, trust the version of reality that requires the least amount of thinking. It's lazy but predictable, and predictability makes them easy to mislead. You ever see someone trust a smile without questioning what hides behind it? They see friendliness, innocence, safety. They never ask themselves why that smile feels a little too polished, why the timing is a little too perfect, why the warmth doesn't match the eyes. They don't want to ask, because asking means confronting the possibility that they misjudge someone. And humans hate being wrong. They'd rather cling to a comforting lie than face a truth that unsettles them. And it's not just people. They misread situations too. A setback arrives and they call it failure. A delay happens and they call it punishment. A door closes and they assume the universe is against them. They never consider that maybe the thing that looks wrong is actually saving them from something worse. Maybe the opportunity that disappeared wasn't meant for them. Maybe the silence they're panicking over is actually protection. But no, they react to the surface. They panic over shadows. They treat uncertainty like doom. Reality is layered. It's made of motives, history, unseen forces, decisions you didn't witness, conversations you never heard. Most of the truth in any situation is hidden beneath the part you can see. But people rush to conclusions because digging deeper takes patience, and patience is rare. People want instant clarity, instant answers, instant certainty. And when the world doesn't hand it to them neatly wrapped, they fill in the gaps with their imagination. They think they're seeing the truth, when they're really just seeing their own fears projected onto the moment. They think they're interpreting signs when they're really just collecting evidence for the story they already chose to believe. They build entire realities based on assumptions, and then defend those assumptions like they're sacred. It's almost amusing how fragile their sense of truth really is. Just one hidden detail, one fact they didn't know, can flip their entire perspective upside down. And here's the strange part. Deep down, they know they don't understand everything. They know life has layers. They know people wear masks. But acknowledging that means admitting they can be fooled. And the ego can't handle that. So they pretend their first impression is enough. They pretend their limited perspective is complete. They pretend the surface tells the whole story. It keeps them comfortable, but it keeps them blind too. You ever notice how reality only reveals its real shape after something goes wrong? After trust breaks, after plans crumble, after the mask slips. Only then do people say, "Oh, now I see." And that moment, the moment they finally see, is always followed by the realization that the clues were there the whole time, the details they ignored, the gut feelings they dismissed, the inconsistencies they explained away. Reality didn't hide, they just refused to look closer. Most people don't want truth, they want reassurance. Truth demands awareness, effort, humility. It forces you to question things you took for granted. It forces you to admit you may not be as perceptive as you pretend. That's uncomfortable. That's why people settle for illusions. They're easier to live with, but illusions don't last. They crack eventually. And when they do, reality comes crashing in, sharp and unforgiving. The world isn't what it seems. People aren't what they seem. Even you aren't what you seem to yourself. But the moment you stop accepting the surface, the moment you stop trusting the first glance, the moment you start questioning instead of assuming, that's when you begin to see the real game, the hidden intentions, the truths behind the masks, the patterns behind the chaos, the meaning behind the mess. Reality rewards those who look twice, those who question their own certainty, those who understand that illusions aren't accidents, they're traps made of assumptions. And the only way out is to stop pretending the first version of the truth is the real one. Vigilance reveals what others overlook, and that's where everything changes. Most people drift through life half asleep, trusting whatever is put in front of them, believing whatever feels convenient, walking into traps simply because they never bothered to look twice. They move like passengers instead of participants, assuming someone else will warn them, someone else will guide them, someone else will think for them. But vigilance, that's a different kind of awareness. It's the decision to stay awake in a world that profits from your sleep. And once you're awake, you start noticing the cracks in the things everyone else swears are solid. People think danger comes with flashing lights and loud alarms. No. The real threats are quiet, subtle, wrapped in routine, hidden behind familiar faces and predictable moments. Only vigilant eyes catch those kinds of dangers. Only someone paying attention hears the slight change in tone, sees the hesitation in a gesture, recognizes the patterns beneath the chaos. But since most people are too distracted, too rushed, too comfortable, they miss all the warnings right in front of them. They think everything is fine until it isn't. And the tragedy is that the signs were there the whole time. They just never looked long enough to see them. You ever watch people fall for the same tricks again and again? They trust the same empty words, ignore the same red flags, walk back into the same situations like nothing happened. They call it bad luck, but it's not luck. It's blindness. They're blind because they never train their eyes to look deeper. Vigilance isn't paranoia. It isn't fear. It's awareness sharpened by experience. It's paying attention to the things that don't match, the things that feel off, the things that whisper instead of shout. It's seeing what's there, not just what you want to believe is there. Most people don't want to be vigilant because vigilance ruins comfort. Comfort makes you overlook things on purpose. It makes you ignore warning signs because accepting them means accepting change, and change is the one thing people resist even when it's necessary. Comfort says, everything is fine. Vigilance says, look again. Comfort says, don't overthink it. Vigilance says, you're not thinking enough. Comfort keeps you where you are. Vigilance shows you what's coming. And if you don't see what's coming, you can't prepare for it. Vigilance isn't about expecting the worst. It's about recognizing the truth. Look at how people judge others. They trust the loudest person in the room, the one with the biggest smile, the one who talks a lot but says nothing. They trust confidence more than character. They trust charm more than consistency. They mistake noise for substance. But someone vigilant doesn't fall for that. They watch the small things, the tone when no one is listening, the choices made when there's nothing to gain, the reactions in moments of tension. It's the little things that reveal everything. And vigilant eyes don't miss little things. When you're vigilant, you start seeing patterns. People's habits, their lies, their intentions, they all follow patterns. Situations follow patterns. Life does too. But you can't see those patterns if you're rushing through life like it's a race you're trying to finish instead of a puzzle you're meant to understand. Patterns don't reveal themselves to the careless. They reveal themselves to the ones who pay attention when everyone else is distracted by the obvious. And maybe that's why vigilance feels lonely. Because while everyone else is celebrating the illusion, you're noticing the truth. You're seeing the strings behind the puppet show. You're catching the slight tremor behind the fake smile. You're realizing that what people call surprises were predictable all along. You just had to be awake to notice. Vigilance makes you see things before they fully unfold, and seeing ahead is both a power and a burden. But vigilance isn't just about avoiding danger. It's also about recognizing opportunity, the kind of opportunity that hides in plain sight, waiting for someone sharp enough to catch it. While others are distracted by noise, a vigilant person notices the small opening, the subtle shift, the quiet invitation. Opportunities rarely announce themselves. They hide behind timing, behind intuition, behind stillness. Most people miss them because they're too busy chasing what everyone else is chasing. But someone vigilant notices what others don't even think to look for. And here's the secret most people never understand. Vigilance doesn't make life harder. It makes life clearer. It doesn't make you paranoid. It makes you prepared. It doesn't make you cold. It makes you aware. The world is filled with traps disguised as blessings and blessings disguised as chaos. Only vigilant eyes can tell the difference. When you learn to watch closely, you stop being fooled by appearances. You stop falling into the same holes. You stop letting life blindside you. Vigilance turns confusion into clarity, noise into signals, coincidences into messages. And the moment you start seeing what others overlook, everything changes. You ever notice how people walk around pretending they're fine? Pretending everything is under control, they plaster a smile on their face like cheap paint on a crumbling wall, hoping no one notices the cracks underneath. But life always notices. It has a way of tapping you on the shoulder at the worst possible moment, whispering, "Time's up." And that's when the truth comes rushing in, the truth you've been running from, the truth you've been burying under excuses, laziness, fear, and those little lies you tell yourself to sleep at night. You see, most people don't fail because they're weak. They fail because they keep waiting for the right moment, the perfect chance, the cosmic sign, the magical push. But here's the punchline. The moment you're waiting for isn't coming. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when you feel ready. If something is going to change in your life, it starts the second you stop lying to yourself and start admitting what you've ignored for far too long. Isn't it funny how people pray for a miracle, but panic the moment life gives them an opportunity disguised as discomfort? They want transformation without turbulence, growth without grinding, strength without struggle. They beg for a new life while clinging to the habits that destroyed the old one. They want blessings but refuse the discipline that unlocks them. They want answers but avoid the questions that expose who they really are. And deep inside, there's this quiet voice, a voice you keep trying to mute, telling you exactly what you need to do. But you don't listen. You turn up the noise around you, your phone, your distractions, your drama. Because listening means confronting, and confronting means changing. And changing? Oh, that's the part people fear most. But here's the twist. Life doesn't care if you're afraid. It doesn't care if you're tired, unprepared, or unsure. It shows up with challenges anyway, nudging you forward like a mischievous shadow in a dark alley. And every time you ignore that nudge, every time you pretend you didn't feel it, life pushes a little harder. Not to hurt you, but to shake you awake. Because somewhere deep inside you is a version of you that's stronger, sharper, wiser, but imprisoned by your own comfort. And comfort? That's the most dangerous trap of all. It doesn't scream, it doesn't threaten, it just whispers, "Stay here, it's safe." Until one day, you look around and realize the walls you thought were protecting you were actually closing in. People think the biggest threat is failure. No, the biggest threat is staying the same, wasting years telling yourself one day, watching opportunities pass like trains you were too scared to board, blaming the world for a story you refuse to rewrite, and then you wonder why nothing changes, why every year feels like a sequel to the last, why your dreams keep shrinking while your regrets keep growing. Because you're living in a loop created by your own hesitation, repeating the same choices, expecting a different outcome. And you call that hope. But it's not hope. It's denial wearing a mask. But listen closely. There's something else. Something hidden beneath the chaos, the fear, the hesitation, possibility, the raw, electric kind. The kind that burns through excuses and lights up every corner of your soul like a spark hitting gasoline. That possibility is waiting for you, begging to be unleashed, but it only appears when you stop running from the truth and start walking toward it. When you stop pretending you're powerless and admit you're responsible. When you stop delaying and start deciding. Because the moment you really decide, everything shifts. Your mind sharpens, your heart steadies, your path clears. And suddenly life isn't pushing you anymore. You're pushing back. And that's the moment everything changes, not because the world becomes easier, but because you finally become someone who can face it without flinching. Someone who doesn't crumble under pressure. Someone who doesn't need permission to rise. Someone who understands that every setback was a setup, every struggle was a lesson, every delay was preparation. Someone who stops waiting for the right moment and becomes the right moment. And once you reach that point, once you stop hiding from what's calling you, life stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like purpose. Because the truth isn't here to break you, it's here to build you. If you're brave enough to face it, funny how people think strength is something you're born with, like some shiny little badge handed out at birth. No. Strength is forged, carved, dragged out of you by life when you least expect it. It doesn't come from peaceful days or easy choices. It comes from the nights that chew you up, the storms that don't end, the betrayals that leave a mark so deep it echoes. That's where real strength grows, in the dark corners of your story, the places you're too afraid to revisit. You avoid those places, don't you? You pretend they don't exist. Pretend the wounds didn't shape you. Pretend the moments that broke you didn't also whisper the most important truths you'll ever hear. You think ignoring your scars makes you stronger, but it only makes you weaker, more fragile, more lost. Most people want to move forward, but they're dragging chains behind them. Old pain, old mistakes, old disappointments. They say they want a new life, but they cling to the ruins of the old one like it's some sacred treasure. They replay conversations that ended years ago. They hold grudges like trophies. They punish themselves with memories that should have been buried long ago. And what does that do? It poisons the future before it even begins. Because how can you walk into something new while clutching everything that broke you? You can't. But letting go feels too hard, too unfamiliar, too risky. So you hold on. And the irony is you're not holding on to the past. The past is holding on to you. But here's the joke nobody likes to admit. The past isn't hunting you. It's waiting for you to face it, to look it in the eyes and say, I'm done running. That's when things start to shift. That's when the chains get lighter. Because healing doesn't start with time, it starts with honesty. And honesty is messy. It strips away your excuses, your illusions, your I'm fine facade. It forces you to confront the parts of yourself you hide from everyone else. The bitterness, the guilt, the regrets, the fears, the dreams you abandoned because you didn't think you deserved them. All of it sits there, waiting for the moment you stop pretending. And when you finally confront it, you'll notice something strange. You didn't break because you were weak. You broke because you were carrying too much alone. You shattered under the weight of expectations, obligations, disappointments you never processed. But breaking isn't the failure you think it is. Breaking is the invitation to rebuild. Breaking is where the truth starts speaking. Breaking is where strength is born. But most people never get that far because they're terrified of looking at the mess. They'd rather sweep it under the rug and smile like nothing happened until it all explodes again, louder each time. You know what's interesting? Life has a twisted sense of timing. It brings back lessons in new forms, challenges wrapped in familiar patterns, the same type of hurt, the same type of betrayal, the same type of disappointment. And you wonder, why does this keep happening to me? But deep inside, you already know the answer. Life repeats what you refuse to repair. It echoes what you refuse to acknowledge. It mirrors the weakness you've convinced yourself isn't there. And it will continue doing so until you stop running, stop hiding, stop pretending you're helpless, But imagine, just for a moment, what happens when you decide to face it. When you decide you're tired of being afraid of your own history. When you decide to reclaim the pieces you scattered along the way. Suddenly those memories don't control you anymore. They teach you. They guide you. They sharpen you. Every wound becomes a map. Every failure becomes a clue. Every scar becomes a reminder of what you've already survived. And that changes everything. Because once you stop fearing your past, nothing in the present can intimidate you. Not the challenges, not the uncertainty, not the whispers of doubt. You walk differently, you think differently, you live differently, because you're not a prisoner anymore. And the moment you reach that level of clarity, life starts revealing doors you couldn't see before. Opportunities you were too distracted to notice. Strength you didn't know you had. Peace that doesn't come from pretending, but from understanding. And that's the turning point. When your past doesn't haunt you, but fuels you. When your pain doesn't control you, but teaches you. When your scars don't define you, but prove you're still here. Because the truth is, you were never meant to stay broken. You were meant to rise from what tried to destroy you, not by forgetting it happened, but by finally understanding why it did. People love to believe that their breakthrough will arrive wrapped in something beautiful. A glowing sign, a perfect moment, a smooth path laid out just for them. They wait for clarity, for calm, for silence, as if life is ever that generous. The truth is, the most important revelations don't show up when things feel safe. They appear right in the middle of chaos, confusion, and noise. They arrive when you're overwhelmed, exhausted, and about ready to give up. That's when the message slips in, quietly, like a whisper in a burning room. Not because life enjoys playing tricks on you, but because desperation has a way of making you finally pay attention. You see, people don't change when they're comfortable. They change when staying the same becomes unbearable. And life knows that. That's why the truth doesn't knock politely. It barges in. It shakes you. It unsettles you. It forces you to look at things you've been ignoring for months, maybe years. But instead of listening, most people panic. They think they're being punished. They think everything is falling apart. They don't realize that sometimes everything needs to fall apart so the right pieces can finally fall into place. Growth is never a gentle process. It's a demolition followed by a reconstruction. But people cling to their comfort zones like lifelines. They say they want better, yet cling to the habits that keep them stuck. They say they want change, yet refuse to let go of the chains wrapped tightly around their own ankles. And then they wonder why they can't move forward. They expect life to deliver blessings to their doorstep while they refuse to open the door. They want transformation without discomfort, progress without sacrifice, strength without struggle. It doesn't work that way. It never has. It never will. And deep down, you know that. You felt it. Those moments when life cornered you, pushed you, squeezed you, until the only option left was to grow. And afterward, when you looked back, didn't you realize something strange? The moment that felt like your downfall was actually the moment that redirected you. The decision that terrified you ended up saving you. The situation that broke you open also revealed something you needed to see, because clarity often hides behind chaos. Understanding grows out of confusion. Purpose emerges from the ruins of what you thought your life was supposed to be. But people don't like that version of the story. It's too messy, too unpredictable, too raw. They prefer the fantasy where life hands them blessings neatly packaged with instructions attached. They want the path without the darkness, the reward without the risk. But every great turning point begins with discomfort. Every shift in direction starts with something shaking loose. And that's what people forget. They pray for signs, and when the signs arrive disguised as storms, they run. But what if the storm isn't there to destroy you? What if it's there to strip away everything holding you back? What if the chaos you're scared of is actually the doorway you've been waiting for? Life doesn't remove what you've outgrown gently. It tears it away. It forces you to face the truth. It pushes you into situations you would never walk into willingly. And that's where transformation really begins. Not in comfort, not in certainty, but in the unfamiliar place where everything is shaking. Here's the unsettling part. Life will repeat the same lesson over and over until you finally understand it. The same patterns, the same disappointments, the same fears dressed in different faces and different situations. Not because life is cruel, but because you keep ignoring the message. You keep avoiding the moment of truth. You keep pretending the whisper isn't meant for you. But it is. It always was. And the moment you finally stop resisting, something strange happens. The chaos doesn't disappear, but it starts to make sense. The discomfort becomes a compass. The uncertainty becomes possibility. The storm becomes a teacher. And for the first time, you realize you weren't losing control. You were being redirected, pushed away from what was slowly destroying you, and guided toward what could finally heal you. Because life doesn't always send good news wrapped in ease. Sometimes it sends it wrapped in chaos, knowing that's the only way you'll open it.